Hey everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Hamilton Winters and I'm the host of this podcast series called Inneractions. Today is episode 11. I'm super excited about this interview that you're about to hear with my good friend Lauren Harper. Today's topic is timing. Hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, Lauren, welcome to the studio. We're so glad to have you. How you
Thank you.
doing
I
today?
appreciate it. Good. Doing well.
Good,
Doing well.
good. Well, we've had a kind of a different week this week. Went a little bit later than we usually do. Like to produce the podcast a little earlier in the week, but we're sitting here on Saturday. Like to have it kind of edited before. But right on the edge of this Sunday when it comes out. Thank you for being willing to come in here on such short notice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And producing a topic that's as strong as timing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Basically, I guess we can just start off with, how we met.
Yeah.
We actually have known each other for a really, really long time. Our grandparents were in connections with each other, so we've grown up in the same city, kind of in the same circle. So I'm very happy to be able to give, a little bit of my personal appearance on timing. I feel, especially in today's generation, that timing is such a sensitive topic and I think it basically emphasizes from social media. We're always on social media, whether that be Facebook or Instagram, or if you still have a Twitter, Snapchat, whatever it may be. I feel like we always see these people who are getting married, who are having kids, who are getting their dream jobs, who are just succeeding in so many different aspects of your life that you crave to succeed in. I know for me, I've sat around and thought about this topic for a really long time. I came from a small town as well as you did. We came from the same one. So I feel like a lot of my friends are getting married. They are having kids. And so I'm sitting here thinking, what is wrong with me? Why am I not in their season, basically? And I was thinking about that, and I kind of stopped in my tracks, and I'm like, wait a second. If I really, truly bring in the Bible, think about the Bible's timetable, that's the only thing I should ever be thinking about. I should not be thinking about my time. I should not be saying, oh my gosh, well, maybe I'm not as good enough. Maybe I'm not as great enough. What happened to me? Well, I just think that, timing, it is such a sensitive topic, and I feel like sometimes when we're focusing on other people's seasons, on other people's timings, we miss the blessings that are in front of us, and I have found myself in that position so many times. I actually just accepted a new job offer, and I feel like that kind of falls into the aspect of timing. I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. I am from West Monroe, Louisiana. After I graduated from ULM in 2016, I moved to New Orleans for about a year and a half with a broker on the insurance industry. I'm in the excess and surplus lines, which is the high-risk insurance industry. And so I was a broker for about a year and a half, and I just knew that I was very unsettled in where I was. It was a great company that I worked for. I loved all the people that I worked with. It just, for me and for my soul, it became unsettled, and that's when I know when I'm not happy, when I don't wake up, not necessarily saying that you have to wake up every day and be like, oh, yeah, let's go to work. But you have to have some kind of drive in you. You have to enjoy what you're doing to some extent. And from what I was doing, it wasn't bringing me joy. And so I would sit there and I would pray and nothing was happening. And finally, something literally just landed in my lap and brought me to Atlanta. Never thought I would ever be in Atlanta, but I'm so thankful that I did end up here. And I met such great friends, and obviously friends from home that end up here as well, which I think is an amazing thing. And so I started out on a different side of the insurance industry and loved it, but I just knew, me personally, the side that I'm on now, you're basically in front of a computer all day. You don't really have that much interaction to people. I think I have a plant sitting on my desk, and so I probably talk to that plant more than anything.
But it's growing really well.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
absolutely.
The plants that you talk to grow really well.
It does, and it's doing very, very well. I'm in a cube, so there's really not that much sunlight, but positive energy is definitely flowing. But I just knew that I just wasn't in my right season. I just knew something had to give. And so I was praying about it again, and I really actually was contacted by a recruiter, and I actually haven't heard from this recruiter in about 6 or 7 months. And so she just popped up out of the middle of nowhere in November and was like, hey, I have this great opportunity for you. And so obviously it ended up being back on the broker side, and it just ended up working out well. And it's kind of funny because usually people can see your potential and they can see the path that you're supposed to be on before you're on it. And so I had all these people coming to me saying, okay, why aren't you a broker? Why aren't you a broker? Why aren't you a broker? And I was like, okay. And finally, once she called me in November, it just kind of like sparked a light bulb. I was like, okay, well, obviously people see a potential in me that maybe I'm kind of pushing down, maybe I'm kind of suffocating a little bit. And so obviously, you know, everything ended up working out and it happened for a reason, and I'm super excited to start this next journey. But I just feel like everything kind of revolves around timing, and I feel like people just put a negative aspect on it, and people are like, well, that's not happening to me, so what's wrong with me? And I think that obviously leads to depression. That leads to all these different negative topics. And like when we look around, we are so blessed. The world is actually a very beautiful place. But I feel like everyone just gets so down on themselves because like I said, it's social media. They look at social media and they're like, well, they're married. I'm 3 or 4 years older than them. Why is that not happening to me? Or they have this dream job. Why can't I get my dream job? So I just feel like it's a very sensitive topic I feel like people need to know that you're in this season for a reason, and God has you in this season for a reason, and you have something to do in this season. And that's why you're not moving, because you haven't completed that task yet.
So let's dive in on the social media stuff.
Well said.
Because it's very well said. Very well said. Perceptions. Right. There are 4 sides to social media perception. There is the role of the person posting whatever they're posting, and there's the role of the person viewing whatever has been posted. It's the perception of that person's particular circumstance is one side. It's also the perception of everyone else who's in their particular circle in reality. And then on the other side, it's the perception of the viewer and the perception of everyone else around that person viewing it that's looking into the exterior of that situation. Meaning, you could have what you think is a dream job and it not be. Or you could have something that is not your dream job, right? But you want to make it appear that it is. You can also look at someone like Russell and say, oh, Russell has his dream job. I want what he has. Or to say, oh, Russell looks like he has his dream job, but he really doesn't. Does that make sense? So that was a very complicated way to say that it's all about how you perceive it. And you can send out different guises, I guess, of your perception. If I put a filter on this, I don't look as bad. If I go post pictures in front of jets, maybe they'll think that I'm doing really, really well, when in reality, I just actually rent a hot desk at the airport, and I'm just kind of around airplanes sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you have to realize that what you're putting out there is being perceived in a million different ways, because now we have the ability to send that information out to millions of different people.
Right.
That is the same situation that I was in that allowed me to find aviation, right? I had a opportunity. I was in sales. I had been told my entire life that I'd be good in sales. Went after it, made decent money, had a good opportunity, wasn't making me happy. And how long can you do something that you hate? It just gets to a point where it's taxing.
Right.
It just is. And being in an environment like that, you feel alone, but the more you start talking about it, you realize that everyone has been in that situation, right? But if you never have that conversation, then you are alone in that. And it's super cool that the timing worked out to where you moved to Atlanta almost exactly the same time that I did.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 2 weeks apart.
Yeah. And it was not planned.
No.
And then Aaron Sewell, our other friend, my current roommate, is in the insurance industry. Y'all actually do some business together.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. She's like, yeah, Aaron sent me some emails.
Even that just shows timing right there too.
And then he moved in the same time that I was moving in, so we ended up being roommates. Kind of going through this whole new big city type experience. We were all on the orientation staff together at our college. And so we spent one summer together, the 3 of us. And then from that, if you would have told us 4 years ago that we would all end up in Atlanta, Georgia together in 2019, we would have told you were crazy.
Right.
But it's the way things worked. Going back to your point about people see things in you before you do.
Mm-hmm.
You've been listening to Louis Giglio's
that's actually
series.
Where I got it from, for sure.
And he says in that Passion and Purpose series that other people can spot your spiritual gifts before you can, and to listen to them. fantastic point.
And I think also, too, I guess you can speak, I mean, as Louis mentioned this as well in the Purpose and Passion series, it's, you know, I think this goes hand in hand with timing, is everyone is struggling so hard to find their purpose. For me, I literally would spend hours, okay, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Why can't I find it? I'm not content. This is not making me happy. I'm not joyful. What is happening? And so I spent hours and hours, as well as many people do. I feel like I'm not alone in that either. But Louis mentioned something that was actually kind of astounding to me, and it's actually very, very simple, and it mentions it in the Bible a bunch of times. It's just like everyone has the same purpose. And so I was like, okay, well, how can every single person have the same purpose if everyone's different? And so then he obviously dove into like passions and like, what's your passion? And, you know, you need to find something that, you know, makes you happy, and like whatever you do, make sure you do it with excellence. So whether you're in a season that you might not like, do whatever you're in with excellence. And that way it'll prompt you just to be something greater when you finally are in that season that you want to be in. But I feel like we kind of waste our days away because it's like, okay, well, you know, so-and-so's here and I'm here, but I'm not happy. But like I said, you're on perception and you're looking at social media and you're like, well, they're so happy. Why can't I be there? So I just feel like there's so many different people in this world, and they're in so many different places right now internally. And whether that be spiritually, whether that be, you know, whatever's going on in their mind, like you said, people just perceive things so differently. You could send something out on social media and mean a completely different thing, and somebody could take it a completely different way. And so I just feel like, I mean, timing is just so crucial, and it's everything, but it's nothing at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that whole thing, you know, perspective-wise and everything like that. And you look at celebrities or idols, right? And the word idol itself, or idolizing, or having an ideal perspective or ideal image or life or whatever that you're pursuing, right? So I think it's one thing if you spend hours to yourself trying to define to yourself what that ideal lifestyle is, and it's another thing if you spend hours of your time looking on Instagram to try to figure out what that ideal lifestyle is. I think to your point there, you know, if you spend hours with yourself, you're going to get a closer to reality perspective than you are going to a third-party source. And then even on that third-party source, people aren't being extremely honest about what their actual experience is. Like you said, with the filters and everything, sometimes it's just minor tweaks that don't seem like a lot, but, you know, something little, especially when you add it up 1,000 times, something little becomes something huge, especially in perception-wise. There's so many different options. You have to choose what perception you see and how do you see that.
Exactly.
And, you know, I think on a deeper level, you're seeing the points instead of the lines that connect those points. And if you try to look a little deeper into, okay, I see this person posting all these things, and those may be his defining points that he's putting on Instagram. But then for me, if I think a little deeper or even do a little more research into that person, I'll find a completely different perspective on that person, and then understand what they may have been putting out in a different way than I had before.
Well, do your due diligence.
Do your due diligence, right?
And then after you...
So either way, you're taking that journey into trying to define for yourself instead of using, even if you use Instagram in that way, if you take it a deeper level and try to find the connections between those points, then you're still going through that process of, you know, you're still diving into that journey to get to those perfect points, because we all want to, we do all want to live out those perfect points, and we're all working to get to those perfect points in our life. So we are going to be attracted naturally to, when we see those perfect moments in other people's lives, to be like, yes, like, and that's what inspires us too, to reach those points.
I feel like it's also kind of like a journey and destination kind of feud going on. Like you mentioned, perspective, and when you look at someone, usually you're like, oh, that's their destination. They've made it. Whether, like I said, whether they've gotten their dream job, whether they've gotten married, whether they've had kids, whatever it may be that they post about, oh, that they've made it. They've hit their destination. And if you dig deeper into it, I truly believe it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And then with journey comes timing. Because usually when people post, you don't see their journey. You don't see what they've gone through, whether, they could have gone through the trenches, which most everyone goes through at some point in their lives. But obviously everyone's posting everything that's positive. And so, which it can create a positive invitation. And, you scroll through Instagram and everything's so positive, but no one really focuses on the journey. And I think that's kind of where this weird cloud comes over, because everyone thinks everyone's life's so happy all the time. And with the struggle, that makes you stronger. That builds your character. That's how you got to be the person that you are today. So I think it's quite funny, because usually obviously we can think about this now, but whenever we're scrolling or doing whatever, whether, just maybe not even on social media, just maybe in person, we're like, oh, they've made it, but we don't really feel like, we don't think about their journey and what they've actually had to go through. And everyone does go through it, but no one posts about it.
Well, think about a newborn, right? If you're with that newborn every day, 3 weeks goes by, 6 weeks, 10 weeks. Every day you don't see much growth, but you have people that haven't seen that baby in 6 weeks. And they're like, oh my gosh, your baby has grown so much, right? If people are posting every single day and you're checking in with them on social media and you actually get to see their journey, you don't get to see their growth. But if they post every once in a while and you're like, oh my gosh, like he just got a new position. Oh, I can't look at that growth. He made it. Well, you didn't see the other 6 weeks that baby had to grow, right? You're looking at it every day, every single day, and you don't get to see that growth.
That reminds me of the example you brought up when you went to the speaking competition. It's like, as a judge, you don't get to see, you were lucky enough as a judge to be a part of that competition previously, so you knew
exactly
what you weren't seeing.
The development that happened the 2 weeks prior. You just saw the polished versions of these people, and, to your point about getting in your own head, because I was there. So Edgar Allan Poe, this is an Edgar Allan Poe quote. It came up on Instagram yesterday, coincidentally. It says, I remained too much inside my own head, and I ended up losing my mind. And he has another one that says, I can't get out of my own head, and I know where it's going to take me. And that's why these conversations are so important, is because I remember being there. I remember, and comparatively, I had such a good situation to a lot of people. But to me, it was just this constant, you're meant for more. There's nothing wrong with having that. There is something wrong with looking at your situation and resenting it. But looking at a situation and resenting it is a lot different than looking at that same situation and appreciating what it brought you to. So I'll never say that I wasted that time, because I didn't, because it allowed me to get here. Back to your point about the points and the lines. And this is an exercise that I use with a lot of the people that I kind of meet with coffee, and it's kind of like informal life coaching type stuff, is when you look straight ahead and you're trying to get to a destination, all of your points look like a big zigzag line. None of it makes sense. But you realize once you get to a destination, which most of the time you didn't even know was your destination, that looking back, it was a straight line the whole time. So it depends on if you have the vision and foresight and faith and trust to know that it doesn't matter where your destination is. One, someone's got you covered. And two, that when you look back on it, you can plan a lot better by saying, I know if I want to get to that point, if I was to imagine myself at that point, turn around and look backwards. Now, how do I get from D to C to B to A? It's a lot easier than going A to B, finding C in order to get to D. Thoughts?
Yeah, and I think basically it's just taking the step. I feel like you said, people get so caught up in their own head that they're like, oh, they, finally get to this point and they freak out, which I do every single day. I think most people do. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, I heard this quote, and it basically was saying that faith isn't exactly what you don't see. It's being in an airplane and landing instead of just circling the airspace. It's knowing what you're getting into, but landing the airplane anyway and just having faith that everything's going to work out. Yeah, so it's actually taking that step instead of just circling, being like, okay, am I ready? Oh, no, let me back up a little bit. Oh, am I ready now? No, not now. Maybe tomorrow.
Do you know what that circling's called? It's called a holding pattern.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
That's
that makes
exactly
perfect
what
sense.
It is.
You're holding,
It's a holding pattern. You're just holding there. You're just waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And oftentimes, if it's anything like the government right now, the air traffic control is not going to be there to tell you, right?
Especially if you wait too long.
Yeah. Then they just get aggravated with you.
And whatever it is you may be facing, if something bad happens, okay, well, at least you know that you tried. What if you didn't even do it and then something absolutely great could have happened from it, but you were so scared to land the plane that you absolutely missed whatever. And whatever could have happened, that might have been that might have been your passion. That might have been your purpose. And so I just think it's basically about getting out of our own head and trusting the timing and trusting the season that you're in and saying, okay, I might not be where I want to be right now, but I can't move forward if I'm stuck where I am circling.
Yep.
I've got to at least land the plane. I've got to at least try.
Are you guys the same age? Did you graduate the same year?
I'm a little bit older than Hamilton, but
older.
we did graduate the same year. 2016. Feels like forever.
We graduated college the same year.
Yeah.
High school a year apart.
Yeah.
She's a year older.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
okay.
obviously way smarter. So
That's not true. That's not true at all.
No, the way this talk is going, it's beautiful to see the progression of thoughts, right? Because I feel like if you're really living that out, which I'm sure you have since you can talk about it now, that is a lot like how it happens in real life.
Yeah.
Like kind of the way we're talking about it right now. So I would pose like, we've gotten to the point where, and it's weird that probably spiritually myself, I'm at this point trying to figure out, well, okay, I understand all that, right? I thought about it for years
Yeah.
So, for some of our listeners who may be a bit younger even, how do we help them not have to go and dive in and be in it for so long just to figure out in the same respect that it was actually about not diving in and doing all that planning and getting absorbed into the ocean of knowledge that we call knowledge and coming back to the real knowledge at the end finally to say, if I do a little investigating and just pay attention to what's right in front of me and build the relationships that are right here, right around me, I'll feel better about myself, and I'll start to realize naturally that trying to know everything isn't the best way to know everything.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that I can save anyone, it's time. Because it's the only thing that someone can spend and never get back. You can spend money and you can always earn more, right? You can lose your girlfriend. You can always, try to win her back or get another one. Right? You can't get your time back. And if you know of a way, please email me. I'm happy to hear. However, I think that directly relates to what I was going to mention, which is A to B to C to D. How many times do you see people trying to take shortcuts from A to C?
Yeah.
And how well does that turn out?
And how necessary was
never.
But how necessary was B? Right?
Well,
do you know that you'll have the skills that you need at C if you don't first go earn those at B? Right? And that was what I always struggled with, right? Coming out, and they're like, oh, no, you've got to pay your dues. To a certain extent, yes. But at the same time, if you already have those skills and abilities, apply them in a position where you can use what you have right now, and then just keep adding to your toolbox. Don't think that you have to go do something completely unrelated just because you needed to pay your dues in order for somebody to understand that you were doing a good job and promote you. And one thing that I wrote down the other day, which was in a situation where you're hoping that someone notices your good work so that you'll be promoted. How many people are just like, oh, no, people will notice that you're working hard. People will notice if you show up early. People will notice if you're nice around the office. Yes, they will. But you can't rely on people to be watching you. A lot of the people that would be watching you that you're counting on to promote you are also counting on other people to watch them, notice they're doing a good job, and promote them. Yeah. You cannot afford to wait for somebody to take you out of your current position and move you into a new one. And if I was to look back at younger people than me, right? I'm 23. Looking back at, say, an 18-year-old that's graduating high school, going into college, going through the motions, ask yourself that question. Are you just going through the motions? What are those motions, and why are you making those motions? Why are you going to college? If you have a really good reason, go do it. I 100% recommend it. But if that's not going to get you to your end goal, maybe that 4 years would be better spent learning how to fly a plane.
And so practically, right, I don't think a lot of 18-year-olds know what their main goal is, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think that, like you said, that makes complete sense,
Yes.
right? And as a 27-year-old,
25, yep.
and 24, it makes sense. It makes complete sense to us what you just said,
Right.
But for the 18-year-old who then has to go to himself, well, okay, that sounds great, but what?
So question.
What is it? You
Question.
know?
Right.
This
What
is
the hell
it.
do I want?
This is it. And it's a question that I pose to everybody. And this overlaps multiple age ranges. Right? I can ask this question to a 60-year-old as easily as I can ask it to a 16-year-old.
Yep.
And this is what I asked myself, which made me pivot into aviation from commercial lighting. What made you happiest at your happiest point? Because now we're not talking about purpose. We're just talking about something that you love.
Passion. Yeah.
What made you happiest at your happiest point? And I always ask that question, and I tell them that I'm not expecting an answer today. However, it might be easier for you if I give you an example. For me, every time I see an airplane, I turn into a 3-year-old, thus answering my question that at 3 years old, I was the happiest version of me, and what made the happiest version of me happiest was aircraft. Okay, well, that helped me to decide that I needed to get my pilot's license. And from that, the steps started occurring. But if you chase after what you love instead of where your destination is, you'll find your destination a lot quicker. Because one, you'll spend a lot less time doing what you need to do simply because you love the time that you spend doing it.
I feel like your destination then also becomes your journey.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you get to the destination quicker because you didn't even realize that you were on the journey, it gives you the opportunity to look back and say, wow, that was a lot of fun. What's next?
Right.
What's next?
And I think then you're saying, it's like, you're going to say either way, wow, I'm here.
Yeah.
But in one scenario, it's going to be, now what do I do next?
Mm-hmm.
But when you really get there, it's, wow, I'm here. Now let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Like now, like, because when you get there in that sense, where you've gone A, B, C, D, you know what's next now.
Or looking
not-
back and say, how can I get them here?
Helping, yeah, it's reaching your arm
And
out
that-
once you've
And that's, I
experienced
think,
it.
what we found was our next for us.
Exactly.
But I think,
Because it's not, I want to do that again. It's not a roller coaster.
yeah.
It's not a roller coaster. Because a roller coaster is just a track. Every time you ride it, it's going to be the same. You will never ride this roller coaster and it be the exact same ride.
And so I don't think you can even choose a specific purpose or profession or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pose the same question Hamilton just asked himself to you to answer.
Right.
Just for the pure fact, like, when I tell someone, like, my credentials, right, it has nothing to do with what makes me the happiest and then now why I'm doing what I am doing now.
Well, I feel like also when you put yourself back into your senior year of high school and you're going to college and no one knows what they want to do. I mean, if you do, all power to you, but me absolutely had no idea. I actually switched completely different fields. But I feel like because our generation is raised on this social media, we're raised on everything, everyone feels like they need to be everything.
Yeah.
And that is not true. You do not need to be everything. You need to be you. Because if you are not you, the world is not going to get what you have to give. And the world desperately needs that. So I feel like, you know, advice to people is just to, like I said, stay away from the superficial things. Stay away from social media and just live your life, because once you do that, you will find your passion a whole lot easier than scrolling through Instagram. You will find what actually truly makes you happy because you're going to be actually actively doing that. And you can make that light bulb come off and be like, oh, you know, this is actually what I like to do. Let me try to make this a profession. And also I feel like it's like a money thing too. Like, everyone wants to make as much money as possible, so they're going to do whatever job is going to make the most money. And when in return, that does not bring them joy. That doesn't make them happy. So it's more of like a labor than it is like a joy. And so I feel like they get that misconstrued too, that it's okay, whatever you do and whatever you love to do it with excellence, and money's not going to matter. Like it's going to.
So I think the relationship is, because we just talked about other people seeing what you're good at, right? But I think we depend a lot on other people to tell us what we love. No one can tell you what you love. They can tell you what you're good at. So if you listen to people telling you what you're good at, try applying what you're best at to what you love. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would say, how do you find those things personally?
How do I find what I'm good at or what I love?
Yeah, practically, how do you answer those questions for yourself?
So I think an easy way to at least identify, because those aren't really questions that you can answer necessarily. It's things that you can identify because they're already there.
So how do you identify? Like through what process or practice?
For me, and an easy example that I give to people that I work with is to ask yourself what questions you get asked about the most. Does that make sense? Because this is not some active exercise that you're going out there and it's like, oh, I'm good at public speaking because I speak a lot. Okay, well, let's take it back.
Right, that's what I wanted to get to.
If you are, say, my mother, right? She gets asked most about her children. She gets asked most about the time she spends with us. She gets asked most about the things that she does in the community and the love that she shows. Well, in that scenario, if people are asking you about those things the most, that is what you are exhibiting the most of, right? Therefore, if you are asked most about your job, that can go one of two ways. One, you either love your job so much that that's all you talk about. Or two, you hate your job so much that people cannot talk to you without hearing about how bad your job is.
Because that's still all you talk about.
Right?
Right, 'cause
So
you're
they have
consumed by it.
identified that in you. Therefore, you start realizing what your perception to other people is and why you may or may not be invited in certain social circles because, oh, well, Russell, all he does is complain about his job. We're not going to invite him here anymore. Oh, well, no wonder I don't have any friends. Now I've identified that that's all I do is complain about my job.
Yep.
You have the opportunity to change that because you have the opportunity to change what people perceive in you, change the rhetoric. And that's why I look at you every day, and my dad's done this forever. He walks up to people and says, hey, tell me some good news. How do you start a negative conversation with the question, tell me some good news? You can't.
Mm-mm.
And you came to my point perfectly, which was, you know, when we have these talks and people are listening to them, to me, it's going to feel like if I didn't know you guys and I was 18 and, you know, that I have to now go and do a lot of work to find out these answers for myself, by myself.
Right.
What I wanted you to bring us to was practically how you actually do that is by having conversations with other people who are doing that same thing or going through that same process.
It all starts with the conversation. I mean, if you're willing to have that conversation, if you're willing to actually express and say, hey, I would love to hear your advice. Not necessarily saying that you need help, but just saying, you know, I see that you are a very wise person. Like, I would just love to see. And I'm very kinesthetic. I learn by doing things. Like, let me do it with my hands. Let me see it. And so if you were to sit there and ask somebody, you know, how do you get there? It's just basically just be you and just figure out what you like to do. And I know, I mean, some of us are like, okay, well, what do I like to do? Like, what is my passion? I don't know what I like to do. What does bring me joy? I mean, and it could be very, very simple. It could be, oh, I love being outside. Okay, well, you can definitely turn that into, you know, that you can further that. Yeah. And so, I mean, I absolutely definitely agree with your point. I think it's just really just being yourself and being honest with yourself and having an honest conversation and be willing to get out there, be willing to network. Because, I mean, everything is relationship driven in today's society. Everything is, which is a great thing. Relationships are amazing. That's what leads you to the next step. That's what leads you, you know, to more success or to be whatever you want to be. And so I just think that you just have to be willing to take that next step and just be willing to land the plane and say, hey, I would just love advice. Let me meet as many people as I can. And once you get all these different connections, you'll be able to figure it out. Not saying that you have to take, you know, A, B, C, D that this person took, but take your A, B, C, D.
And
take
maybe
your route.
Maybe you haven't found it yet.
Right.
Because at 18, we're talking a snapshot.
Right.
So you're saying an 18-year-old could be listening to this podcast,
Right.
which I hope they are, and saying, well, I'm going to rack my brain about what I love. Well, maybe you haven't found it yet.
Right.
And that's okay. That's so okay.
And then it's motivation to go out and try things that could be your passion.
And
to go take guitar lessons.
I don't think any of us found what we love. when
I
we were
still
here.
ask myself that every day. I'm like, okay, what do I really like to do?
That was, to me, I completely relate to all the words you guys are using because I've found what I love. You know, I'm completely comfortable in what I do, and I did it through the way that we were describing, you know, by interacting with other people, talking to other people, getting feedback, and allowing them to, you know, open up these opportunities and these ideas that I could then take back and then have a conversation with myself, you know, and say, you know, well, hey, do you like that? Well, okay,
And
let's at least try it out, you know?
Give it a try.
And it's so cool, too, because, you know, we're all sitting here and like you said, you found what you love. And I love what I do as well. But at the same time, I'm still searching to find what deeply that I love to do. And so we're sitting here, you know, different situations, but still can relate so much. Because, I mean, speaking to an 18-year-old, I still don't know what I really love to do. I mean, I could rattle off a lot of things that I could put first that, you know, I've been a dancer my whole life. That's honestly my one first love. So but I'm still trying to find that, whether that be professionally or personally, I'm still trying to find that. So you don't have to figure that out at 18, nor 21, nor 30. But just find something that does bring you joy and hold on to it, and that'll lead you to find what you love.
Or use it as a motivating factor.
Right.
And
If you can't have what you love now, work as hard as you can and enjoy what you're doing in order to buy yourself the opportunity to do that full time.
It'll at least give you something to talk about in conversation with other people.
Right.
Oh,
at the very least.
absolutely.
Right.
At the very least, it's better than them hearing how crappy you think the things are.
Absolutely.
It's about perspective, too.
But think about tying the carrot to your own back that hangs over your head. And you placed your own carrot there, and you're always chasing after it.
You're running on a
And
treadmill, and it's just
It's the motivating factor of, okay, well, if I hate what I do, at least I can, you know, as a first step, find out what I love. And if I can't get it right now, put it out on a string and a stick in front of you and run after it. And then you've found the motivation to wake up every day and do what you don't necessarily love to get to what you love one day.
So would you say that is what you now love to do and now love to share? Not necessarily the thing that you do, but how you do the thing that you do.
Yes.
well, yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the passion and purpose stuff.
The excellence.
It's excellence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I have set excellence as my standard is because I am trying to get to that thing that I love, right? But it's a hard conversation to have.
Oh, because
Excellence.
love is
Yeah,
Right.
it's
a word.
Yeah.
When it's not
Subjective.
about what you do, it's about why you do it. So
Right.
you could be stuck in a season where you don't like where you're at, but you're going to do this, whatever job you're in, whatever season that you're in, you're going to do it with excellence because it's about why you do it. Because you see that you want to be better. You see that you want something else. So you're going to do what you're doing now with excellence. And that transition is going to be so much smoother because you're going to have that worth ethic. People are going to see that.
Yep.
And don't think that you can't have a weird combination.
Right.
Like, this is not everything has to fit hand in hand. Like, I love aviation. My gift is speaking. My formal background is business. Therefore, how do I take my classical training, my love, and my gifts and put them all together? Okay, well, let's start an aviation company. I can handle the business side, marketing side of stuff, and I'll start a podcast. Wow.
Incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
That hand in hand doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense if you're on Indeed.com looking for somebody to give you those 3 different opportunities. You have to go make that stuff sometimes.
Yes.
But if you know that those are your 3, it makes what you're making so much more meaningful to where it doesn't seem like you're formulating things from scratch.
And
it just doesn't.
Bringing that back around to timing, I guess,
Yep.
too,
Oh, yeah,
as well. Is like,
absolutely.
you know, once you do what you're good at and you do what you love. And like you said, that they don't necessarily make sense on paper, but I mean, wow, literally look what's happening.
Yeah.
You can be so focused on the joy and the success that you personally are doing that you're not worried about someone else's timetable. You're not worried about so-and-so doing whatever great thing. And kudos to them. So proud of them for doing whatever they're doing, but you're getting so much, I guess, kind of like a high. You're just getting, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on what exactly is happening in front of you and you're actually seeing it opposed to being blindsided by something that didn't even involve you.
So let's take it to the next iteration, right? We talk about our particular circumstance. Let's talk about the next iteration, which is other people's timelines and circumstances. So I just said that I found aviation was what I loved, speaking, presenting was my gift, and that business was my classical background. Finding out what those three are for you allows you to find out what spaces you are not filling and to try to find other people and other opportunities to place those people in to fulfill those opportunities with you. Take Russell, who I'm looking at right now. Russell is 27. I'm 23. Russell is an engineer, mechanical engineer, with a concentration in vibration. That is so far out of my pay grade. Okay, we both love aviation to a certain extent, but that's not why you went into aviation. You like it because it's the culmination of everything that you had learned and loved individually. However, what we're doing here at Inspire Aviation would not be possible for two things. One, you having a different skill set, gifts, and resources, classical trainings, and two, a different timeline that had to match up with mine. And we've talked about this a lot. There have been some very split-second instances where this whole thing could have not happened. I was applying for the Air Force Reserve. You were, with the flight school, and if I would have come in a year earlier or a year later, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And I always thought it would be so cool when we got to this point. We've been through 11 weeks of this, and it seems like 11 weeks later, our podcasts are hitting in each episode almost every single other topic. They're all culminating, right? Timing has led into risk-taking. Timing has led into commitment. Timing has led into purpose. Timing has led into identity. And now every single episode that we have to revisit all of those topics, which is fantastic. But it goes back to our very first episode, which is the chance of everything happening being one of one. And we talk about purpose. And that 18-year-old thinking, I have to work my tail off to go find my purpose. Everything is going to happen that was meant to happen. And if it was meant to happen any other way, it would happen that way. Don't stress yourself out about finding your purpose. It will find you. However, if you don't take that first step, then that is your purpose. Your purpose is to be a couch potato the rest of your life. You weren't supposed to do anything today because you didn't. But if your purpose is to really take control and initiative of the things that you love and what you're passionate about and what your classical training is, and just say, you know what, I'm not listening to anybody else. I'll listen to the people that tell me what I'm good at, and I'll listen to the people that are encouraging me, and I'll listen to the voice inside of my own head that tells me that I believe that it can be done. I'll go do it. And then it's seamless.
You got to have the right people. You have to have the right
There's no
circle.
other way it should happen. And then it leads you into the conversation of stop. Look around you. Who is surrounding you right now? You don't have all the contacts that you will one day, but you have the ones that are around you right now. Are you utilizing those people? Not taking advantage of them, utilizing them, pairing them up with their gifts, opportunities to use them. Start looking around at your friends and saying, I always thought you were just funny. Dude, that's your gift. How can I use that? How can I bring you into this circle? Who can I introduce you to? And then you've become a facilitator of people's gifts with opportunities. That's what we're doing here. It's all about timing.
Absolutely.
But timing is always right. And we talk about marriage and we talk about kids and going back and looking at people that have kids and that are married, and some have already been divorced.
Right.
Wow. It's just the way that it is. However, it's easy to look at those people that don't have your same circumstances and to criticize. And to criticize is simply to say to someone else that you're not like me. That's all you're saying. You're not like me. That wasn't my timeline. my timeline is this. I'm in my timeline. You're in your timeline. I hope that we can match up sometime, but that's not my timeline. So instead of looking at their timeline and saying, oh, they shouldn't have had kids. Oh, they got married too early. It's easy for us to say. However, my approach to it has always been to look at people and say, hey, look, you're not married yet. And look, you don't have kids yet. I don't care how old you are. Can we at least have a conversation and put in a little bit of thought on enjoying the time that you're in now? And then you start asking yourself the question of, okay, well, I'm not married yet and I don't have kids. Do I want those things right now? Well, maybe you do. Well, do you have the means to be able to support a spouse or support children if you had them? Well, maybe not. Okay, well, that kind of answers the question of why you shouldn't have them right now.
Mm.
Okay, well, say you got married. Once you had the means to support a spouse, would you then have a means to support a family? Well, maybe not yet. Well, maybe then you can really fully enjoy your marriage. But take it back a step, because you're hurrying up to get married. Well, do you have the means to have the wedding of your dreams? Or maybe you take that wedding down a notch budgetarily and say, you know what, we were going to try to hurry it up and have it in 6 months, but maybe I should spend a couple of years just enjoying my time with my fiance and not jumping the gun to try to get married as soon as possible.
I feel like everyone's trying to look for the next step, and they're not
Exactly.
enjoying where they're at. And I can speak to that so many times. I mean, it's happened to me. I mean, everyone does it. That's the way the world is operating right now.
Absolutely.
Everyone's trying to get to the next thing. They're trying to catch their next flight. They're trying to
But it goes back
get
to
an
that
Uber.
looking back on it.
Right.
If you don't take the time to view yourself as the 60-year-old that's retiring as an empty nester, you don't take the time to look at each individual segment of your timeline and say, man, if I would have done it just going straight ahead at it, I would have gypped myself out of 2 or 3 years of this segment that now I see I'm putting a bigger priority on. You can't get that back if you just do it and look back at it and say, I wish I would have spent more time being engaged instead of jumping straight into marriage. Well, if you do it right now and you act on the impulses of a 23-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 27-year-old, you may look back and have regrets. What I'm saying is, look at it from the front and enjoy the view, but envision yourself at the end and look back and appreciate the timing.
Well, how many times do people say, oh, I wish I could go back. I took that time for granted. Every it's the epitome of everything.
Every day.
And
Do
so
they ever say, I'm so glad I rushed into that?
Yeah, or I'm so glad that I played it safe.
Yeah.
right.
What do people say on their deathbed? I should have taken
I
more
should have
risks.
done that. Yeah.
I should have taken more risks.
And practically, I think how that happens is the opposite of intuitively, how you would think that happens, right? Because right now the way we frame this, it's like I need to sit down and I need to figure it out, right? Otherwise, I won't know.
Anxiety.
Right? Which is the wrong way
It's
to go.
giving me anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, yes.
I've been there.
Which is the wrong way to go. So it's like this maze of words because sometimes we say the same words, but we mean different things in the same context. And so if you're someone who hasn't navigated in that maze yet for very long, if you're just now hearing these words or how people are talking about navigating your own mind, it can be extremely confusing.
Yeah.
And I think the key to that is if you're hearing a message that you're relating to either on this show or another talk or you see something on Instagram you like, the best thing to do is to talk about it with the people around you.
Yes.
I feel like people hate talking about things. I feel like everyone tries to handle everything themselves and internally.
And that's where I think
and that blows up because
Yeah.
people are trying to be everything. Like I said, they're
And
trying
not
to be
to-
every single person.
And not to like harp on it too much, but I think that might come from them listening to people who already have figured it out say you need to figure it out because once I figured it out,
And that give
you
the
need to figure it
perception
out,
that
you
they
need to
have it
figure
all
out.
figured out.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the app Waze. Do you use Waze
Yeah.
for maps?
I mean, not all the time, but yeah.
What makes Waze more valuable than Google Maps or Apple Maps?
People's input.
Because people can input the journey they've already been on or the journey that they're on and warn other traffic goers about what they've experienced.
Yeah.
And guess what? If I-85 is red, standstill, I'm not going to take it because I have Wazers telling me that that's not the way to go.
So, okay,
It
let's look at
reroutes
that
me.
and say, in the Waze app, you don't see everything that's happening in New York if you're driving in Georgia.
Exactly.
If you're on Instagram, you see things that happened 3 years ago. You see things happen that are happening in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to think that that is relative to your life to apply practically right now at this moment
So good.
is way, way probably far off from
That's so
what is
good.
actually going on in your life at that moment.
What good is studying the traffic patterns in Los Angeles if you're going to be driving in Atlanta every day?
Right.
Yeah.
It's
so
not.
It's useful if you can take that as a means to have positive conversations
Yes.
with people about those, because through that you'll figure out what's useful for the time being.
Well, and if you don't contribute, if you just use the app and try to dodge everything that I'm going to miss the traffic over here and I'm going to miss, you don't contribute to allowing your experience to be part of the program. You don't put in that there's a traffic light out at Peachtree and Piedmont. You don't put that there's a flat tire rolling around on the interstate. You don't put that there's traffic, but there really is. Then everyone else that could have missed out on that, right, that could have gone around, that could have had a better route to where they need to go, they don't get that from you.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
it's
good.
twofold. If you're a person that's looking for the answers, seek out someone that you respect enough to say, hey, you at least look like you have it all together, right? Would you just have coffee with me once a week and just tell me about your experience?
Yeah, that's the practical.
And the other side, be the person that has coffee with the person that is respecting you enough to ask you to coffee.
Right.
And share that experience with them.
That's true.
That's the biggest compliment you can get. Somebody looking at you and say, hey, we need to start having coffee once a week. I can't tell you how much that means to me when people are like, hey, can we set up a 30-minute phone call? Hey, can we? And it's not because I have it all together. They honor my opinion. Mary Allison Mitchell,
Yeah.
we talk for 30 minutes every Thursday. I have it on my calendar as pure positive energy. That's all we talk about. It's pure positive energy.
And it's actually
your accountability partner.
being
It's-
willing to make the conversation. I feel like people also bringing it back to seasons. I feel like people don't like to talk about what they've been through. Whether that's, good all day long. They'll hit you with it right up front. But the not so good things people don't like to talk about, which is human. No one really likes to talk about the bad things. But I really and truly believe that if we do talk about what's happened to our lives, and obviously we have made it to the other side. We have made it past it because we're here today. Yeah. And I feel like if you do talk about it, somebody could be going through that exact same thing and they need the hope that you have because you've actually been through it. You understand, maybe it's not the exact same thing that you're going through, but maybe it's a similar situation. And you just need to hear that positive feedback that they've made it.
So I'll put it this
That's
way.
perfect.
Dr. Youth, who was our pastor at First Baptist Church, West Monroe. He's now the pastor of First Baptist Orlando. I think it was him that said this. There are three types of people. Those about to go through a storm, those going through a storm, or those that had just come out on the other side. So keep that in mind, that the person that you either think that you are or that think that somebody else is that has it all together, that their life is great, they're one of those three people just like you are.
I would argue that aren't we all always playing all of those roles?
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's plenty of people ahead of me who I look at that way, and there's plenty of people below me that look at me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if I only remember the ones that are above me,
Yes.
then I won't have the truer perspective of myself by not looking at the people who are looking at me in the same respect.
Everyone's
have to
so
play those
self-centered too. It's like everyone's like, "Oh, woe is me." And so I just feel like everyone is focusing on themselves and they're trying to be everything and figure everything out themselves when all it takes is obviously timelines lining up and a simple conversation saying, "Hey, just talk." Just general conversation. It doesn't even have to be about a certain topic. It could just be positive conversation. But I absolutely agree with your point. Everyone is all three of those things. But it just determines what you exempt, like what you speak about, what you talk about.
Yeah. Completely agree. It's about the conversation.
Right.
Certain conversations can't happen without the timing being right.
Right.
And we've all been in conversations where we've pressed the issue and it was not the right time. We've also had experiences where we didn't talk about something when we had the chance to, and then maybe it's too late. So when you start thinking about it that way, of what are the rewards and consequences of talking about something, of taking an opportunity. If it's not the right timing, one, I always pray for doors to be closed.
Right.
That is more valuable to me than doors being opened, because I trust that doors will always be opened. However, that takes the stress and responsibility off of me if I ask for doors that I'm not supposed to go through to be closed very loudly and hard.
So how do you, I guess I have a question too, which I mean, I guess you kind of hinted at it, but how do you know when the right timing is, and how do you know when, because you can pray for something, you can pray so hard for something, but sometimes you just might not get an answer. And that either means that you need to be a better listener, or it just might not be the right time. So I guess for me, and I guess for multiple people here and people listening, how do you know when's the right time and when's not the right time? Just from your perspective.
Yeah.
I would pose, what did it feel like when you thought the timing went perfect, right? Synchronicity.
Yeah.
I think we've all, or synchronizing.
Yeah.
I think that we can say that word, but we also know what it feels like.
Yes.
And I think if you can tap into what did it feel like when those moments were happening, then you can look back and you start to remember the other moments when they happen, just based on the feeling, just like a song, helps you remember memories you forgot about, right?
Right.
Just
I was going to
trying
say the same
sit
thing.
down
Yeah,
and
music.
think about
It's your feeling.
how did it feel, right? How
It's
did
the feeling.
How did you feel when you said to yourself, "Wow, things are working out really well right now." The timing on everything in my life is just going perfect, and then from there, maybe looking at, now that you're not in that moment, you can see it a little bit clearer, what led to that happening. Was there things that either A, you did, or B, things that the people around you were doing to have those moments happen? Because maybe you haven't been the main contributor of making those moments happen, but you've been a part of someone who has the wherewithal and the insight to make those environments so that those things do happen. So from there, you can imitate that person and say, well, A, maybe I should have a conversation with that person now that I figured it out.
Yeah.
Or B, just, sometimes that person may not be in this world anymore. So from what I remember, how did that person act? How did they treat other people? What was their conversations like? What were the words that they said?
I feel like it's almost like a learning experience too. Like, say you were to act on something and it wasn't the right time. Well, okay, I guess maybe figuring out, like you said, what did it feel like? Are there things that I can learn from that to take to the next, situation that I may have? So, I mean, yeah, I agree.
A great exercise. My dad tells me this all the time, because I call my parents almost every day with I have to tell somebody about how productive our day was. I'm just overjoyed. When I leave the office, I'm just like fired up. That's why I go work out after work. I'm just like fired up. And Dad's like, it's like you always have a good day. I'm like, well, every day is generally really good. There's always something in the day that made that day good. There are things that make days bad, but there's generally something that I can hold on to that makes the day good. And he tells me, you're writing down this experience, right? You're putting it into a podcast, or you're videoing it, or something that you can look back on and say, remember when every day was good? Man, today sucked, but maybe if I can enter back into that experience and I can remember what that felt like, I can draw from that and say, what was I doing back then that I'm not doing now? Or you can at least appreciate that time that you had and long for it in the future if that's not where you are right now.
It's almost like your motive too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
so
like,
are you writing down this experience? Or are you just taking it and saying, well,
Right.
today was good, how's tomorrow going to be?
Yeah.
Well, just, even if it's one sentence, today was a great day.
Like, what was your motive
Yeah,
when you were
totally.
having good days? Like,
Exactly.
what was your end goal? What was your why?
Yeah.
Why were you
Yeah.
having these good days?
And there's so many factors, I mean, it could be down to the food you were eating that day.
Yeah.
So
It
it's
could
like
be anything. It's perception.
Yeah.
What do you perceive as the best thing that happened that day?
It's like, and then you just find, talking about ideals, right?
Yeah.
So what I did recently, only a few days ago, is I made a notes that was my ideal day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do I do in an ideal day, right? I haven't had an ideal since I wrote that down. I haven't followed that to a T in a day yet, right? But just by having that, I can say to myself,
That's brilliant.
well, I did most of it, right?
Yes.
Like, the things I didn't do were less than the things that I did, so it was a good day, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't my ideal day, but it was a pretty good day because I did most of the things that I would do in an ideal day.
Absolutely. And I'll also hit on this, and this I think we need to probably close out here. Sometimes the timing is so good that it's indisputable, and it's something that's so obvious that once it happens, taking notice of that and appreciating it for what it is. And what I'm thinking about is Caleb, whose story we still haven't produced, and we've hinted to it on podcasts before. Caleb's a homeless man that I've befriended, and I came back from Asia in September, and at that point we were doing our men's group on Tuesday mornings at Starbucks instead of Cracker Barrel. So you've got that timing of we moved our venue. And this one morning, we met on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. I saw him outside, went and bought him a muffin and coffee. Long story short, he comes up and tells us his incredible story. And I ended up going to Barnes & Noble an hour and a half later and interviewing him in the back of the children's section. And I still have this footage, and we still haven't produced it yet. He told me this incredible story. And throughout the next couple of weeks, I started bringing him things. I wasn't giving him anything that he didn't need, but I'd bring him a jacket or I'd bring him a pair of shoes, and we'd just sit down and talk about what he needed to do to get to the next step. And what he would tell me is, I just need $150. $150 for what? I need $150 to get my Social Security, my birth certificate, and a cell phone, because I have people that are willing to give me a job. They just can't get in touch with me. And so I said, I could cut you a $150 check today, but I think that something cool is going to happen here, right? And all I wanted to do was plant the seed. I wanted other people to take from this. If you continue to watch and dig the seed up and see if it's growing, you're not ever going to grow a plant that way, right? So I just wanted to plant the seed and then, cultivate it and let the rain happen. But long story short, that Friday I went to, this is 2 days later from the interview at the back of Barnes & Noble, and went to my men's group on Fridays, Bible study, told the story of Caleb because I was going to meet him an hour after the Bible study ended. And everybody was just blown away that this guy was so candid that he wanted to give his story and that all he needed was $150. And a guy came up to me in my Bible study, the one that he actually had invited me to this Bible study, named Ed Bauer. He would look like he was about to break into tears. And I was like, Ed, what's up? And he said, you don't know this, but I've had a gift card that Verizon gave me for signing up with my phone for them for $150 that I've been holding on to for a year, and it expires at the end of this month. And I've been in Walmart, and I've had items in my bag or in my basket that I was going to check out, and I put it all back. And I've been in the drive-through line, and I was going to break it into $10 Chick-fil-A cards to give to homeless people, and I ended up not doing it. He said, but I have it in my wallet, and I think it belongs to your friend. And so that kind of timing, remembering stories that happen like that, they continue to happen if you appreciate them when they happen. And then they get bigger, simply because you recognize that they happened. And you can dive into the chances that everything had to go right in order for something like that to happen, or you can simply appreciate that it happened and have faith that something like that is going to happen in the future. So I think that about wraps us up. Lauren, fantastic guest, fantastic conversation. Thank you. If any of the listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they?
Yeah, absolutely. My Instagram hashtag is LaurenFrancis_. And you can definitely hit me up by email as well. It's Harper, L as in Lauren, F as in Frank, 67 @gmail.com. And I would be more than willing to have a conversation, or like you said, a cup of coffee or whatever. Definitely thankful to be on here.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you so much. Russell?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. That was a beautiful conversation.
Absolutely. They just keep getting better, don't they?
Yeah.
And We've had some fantastic guests on the show so far. If you're interested in being on the show, you can visit my website, hamiltonwinters.com. At the bottom of the homepage, you can fill out a little application. We'd love to have you on the show. Love to meet you. Listen to our podcast either on Spotify, on iTunes, or you can still find us on YouTube. Please click subscribe and consider liking and commenting below any of the videos. You can also listen to it on hamiltonwinters.com/podcast. Until next time, we come to you every Sunday, so we look forward to having you next week for episode 12. This was episode 11 on timing with my friend Lauren Harper. Thank you again, Lauren. We look forward to having you next week. Go love on somebody today. Have a great one.